The knocking under the stairs. The first thing Adrian Volkov noticed about the house was how quietly it hated him. It stood alone at the edge of a pine forest in northern Romania, where winter did not arrive like a season, but like a punishment. Snow gathered on the roof in thick, silent layers. Black branches leaned toward the windows, as if trying to look inside. The hills behind the property disappeared every evening beneath a pale fog, and by nightfall the whole world seemed reduced to three things: the house, the forest, and the sound of Adrian's own breathing. He had not planned to return there. For almost 12 years he had avoided the place. He had built a life in Bucharest, studied architecture, taken work, drawing clean modern buildings made of glass and light, things that had nothing to do with his childhood home, with its warped wooden floors, stone walls, and narrow corridors that smelled faintly of damp wool and extinguished candles. But after his mother died, the lawyer sent him the keys. His father had been gone for years, killed in a fire Adrian barely remembered. His mother, Elena, had spent the last decade shrinking into herself, answering fewer calls, writing shorter letters, and leaving certain questions untouched. When she passed away from heart failure in a hospital room that was too white and too warm, Adrian realized there was no one left to ask. So he came back. The house looked smaller than it had in his memories, yet somehow heavier. Its windows were dark. The iron gate screamed when he pushed it open. Snow swallowed his boots as he crossed the yard with one suitcase in his hand and a box of his mother's belongings under his arm. Inside, the cold was waiting for him. Adrian spent the first evening lighting the fireplace, checking old pipes, and walking from room to room with the strange discomfort of a man trespassing in his own past. Every corner seemed to remember him better than he remembered it. The hallway where he once ran with wooden toy soldiers. The kitchen where his mother kneaded bread in silence. The sitting room where his father used to stand at the window smoking, watching the trees as if he expected something to come out of them. By 10 o'clock, the wind had risen. It pressed against the walls and whispered through the cracks. Adrian sat at the kitchen table with a glass of red wine untouched before him, sorting through a box of his mother's papers. Most of it was ordinary medical receipts, old photographs, letters from distant relatives, church documents yellowed with age. Then he found a picture. It showed him as a boy, maybe 6 years old, sitting on the front steps of the house. His mother stood behind him. His father was beside her. But what made Adrian pause was not his parents. It was the space next to him. Someone had been cut out of the photograph. Not torn out carelessly, but removed with precision. A child-sized shape was missing from the image, leaving only a white wound in the paper. Adrian stared at it for a long time. Then from somewhere below the floor there came a sound. Talk. He looked up. The house settled around him. Talk. It came again. Not from the roof. Not from the walls. From beneath him. Adrian's eyes moved toward the hallway, where the basement door stood closed. A childish part of him buried deep, and old woke instantly. He remembered that door. He remembered how his mother had always kept it locked when he was young. He remembered her voice, soft but firm, telling him never to play near the stairs. He remembered once asking why, and the way her face had changed. Because some places in this house are not for children, she had said. Talk. Adrian stood. The floorboards creaked beneath his weight as he walked down the hallway. The basement door was made of dark oak, its brass handle dulled by age. He placed his hand on it, expecting the old childhood fear to vanish under adult reason. It did not. He opened the door. Cold air breathed up from below. The basement stairs descended into darkness, narrow and steep, with stone walls on either side. Adrian reached for the switch. The bulb flickered once, twice, then came alive in a weak yellow glow. The basement was larger than he remembered. It stretched beneath the house like a buried second home. Stone pillars held up the ceiling. Old shelves lined the walls. Dust-covered furniture sat beneath white sheets, their shapes hunched and human in the dim light. There was a laundry sink, a rusted boiler, several storage rooms, and at the far end beneath the turn of the stairs a small wooden door. Adrian froze. He had forgotten that door. It was low, almost like the entrance to a cupboard built into the stone beneath the staircase. A heavy iron lock hung from it. Around the frame the wood was scratched. Not fresh scratches. Old ones. Deep ones. Adrian walked closer. The sound did not come again. He crouched before the little door and brushed dust from the lock. His fingers came away gray. There was something deeply wrong about it. Not the lock itself. but the fact that it had been placed on the outside. To keep someone out, a lock belonged outside. To keep someone in it belonged there too. He stood quickly, disturbed by the thought. Old house, he whispered to himself. Old noises. But his voice sounded small in the basement. That night, Adrian slept badly. He dreamed of snow falling inside the house. He dreamed of his mother standing at the basement door holding a bowl of soup in trembling hands. He dreamed of a child crying somewhere far below him. At 2:17 a.m., he woke with his heart hammering. Tock. Silence. Tock. He sat up in bed. Moonlight lay across the floor in pale bars. The fire had died in the hearth, and the house was blue with cold. For a moment, Adrian did not move. He listened as carefully as a man listening for his own name in a crowd. Tock, from beneath the stairs. This time, he did not go down. He told himself it was the pipes, the boiler, the old bones of the house shifting in the cold. He told himself many things, until dawn finally bled into the windows. But the next morning, something was missing from the kitchen. The loaf of bread he had left on the counter was gone. So was the apple beside it. Adrian searched the floor for mice droppings, for torn packaging, for any ordinary explanation. He found none. The back door was locked. The windows were latched from the inside. Only one thing had changed. On the kitchen floor near the hallway, there was a faint, wet footprint. Bare. Small, but not a child's. Adrian did not breathe for several seconds. He followed the mark to the basement door, where it faded into the wood. By the third night, the house no longer felt empty. It watched him. When Adrian stood at the sink, he felt a tension behind him. When he walked past mirrors, he expected to see another figure standing at the edge of the reflection. At times he heard sounds beneath the floor, a scrape, a whisper, something like fingernails moving slowly across wood. He began searching his mother's papers more desperately. On the fourth evening, he found a sealed envelope hidden inside her Bible. His name was written across it in her handwriting. Adrian. His hand shook as he opened it. Inside was only one sentence. Forgive me for the room under the stairs. He read it again and again. The wind moaned outside. Somewhere in the house, a pipe knocked once. Adrian stood so abruptly that the chair fell behind him. He took the envelope, a flashlight, and a crowbar from the garage. Then he went to the basement. Each step downward felt like a surrender. The basement bulb flickered above him. Shadows shifted across the stone. The little door waited beneath the stairs, its iron lock black and still. Adrian knelt before it. For several minutes he could not make himself move. The crowbar felt heavy in his hand. His breath smoked in the cold air. Then softly from behind the door came a sound. Not knocking this time. Crying. A low broken sob. Adrian's skin tightened. Who's there? He whispered. The crying stopped. Silence expanded around him. Then something moved behind the door. A slow scrape. The sound of someone leaning close from the other side. Adrian lifted the flashlight, though the door was solid wood. Who are you? For a long moment there was nothing. Then a voice answered. Weak. Dry. Almost childlike. Is mother still angry with me? Adrian did not move. The basement seemed to tilt around him. That voice. It was not his father's. Not a stranger's. Not anyone he knew. And yet something in it struck him with such intimate terror that tears rose instantly to his eyes. Because the voice sounded like his own. A younger, wounded, forgotten version of himself. Adrian backed away from the door, one step, then another. The thing behind it began to knock again. Tock, tock, tock. Not loudly, not violently, almost politely, as if it had been waiting for years, as if it knew he had finally come home. The boy who never left Adrian did not remember climbing the basement stairs. One moment, he was standing before the little wooden door listening to the voice behind it, and the next he was in the kitchen, above gripping the edge of the sink so hard his fingers had gone white. Snow lashed against the windows. The entire house groaned beneath the wind like an old ship trapped beneath black water. Is mother still angry with me? The words would not leave him. That voice had not sounded monstrous. It had not sounded violent or inhuman. If anything, it had sounded frightened, lonely, like a child waiting outside a locked room after doing something wrong. But it had also sounded impossible. Adrian poured himself wine with trembling hands and nearly dropped the bottle. His pulse hammered against his throat. Every instinct told him to leave the house immediately, to grab his coat, get into the car, and drive south until the forest disappeared behind him forever. Yet another part of him, the deeper part, the wounded part, already knew he would not leave, because something terrible had happened in this house, and somehow, his mother had carried it to her grave. The basement remained silent for the rest of the night. No knocking, no crying, only the storm. Adrian sat awake until dawn in the sitting room beside the fireplace, surrounded by old photographs and unopened boxes. Shadows moved across the walls with the flames, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw the little door beneath the stairs. Around 6 in the morning, exhaustion finally dragged him into a shallow sleep. He dreamed of his mother, not the sick woman from the hospital, but the younger version of her, from his childhood. She stood in the basement holding a tray of food, soup, bread, a glass of water. Her eyes were red from crying. "You mustn't make noise," she whispered into the darkness. Then another voice answered from somewhere unseen. "I'm sorry." Adrian woke violently. The fire had died. Cold blue morning light filled the room. For several seconds he sat motionless, listening carefully, half expecting another knock from below. Instead he heard something else. The sound of a drawer closing in the kitchen. Adrian stood instantly. Hello, no answer. He moved slowly toward the kitchen doorway. Every floorboard creak sounded unbearably loud in the morning silence. The kitchen was empty, but on the counter beside the sink sat a bowl. Adrian stopped breathing. It was old porcelain decorated with tiny blue flowers along the rim. His mother used to serve soup in those bowls when he was sick as a child. The bowl was wet, and inside it were breadcrumbs. Fresh. Adrian's chest tightened so painfully he nearly doubled over. Someone had been upstairs. While he slept, he backed away from the counter and looked toward the hallway leading to the basement door. It was closed, but now he noticed something he had not seen before. Mud. A thin trail of damp footprints crossed the hallway floorboards. Bare feet. Pale brown water melting into the wood. They led downward, back into the basement. By noon, Adrian found himself digging through the attic. The storm outside had weakened, but the sky remained heavy and gray. Dust floated through pale beams of light as he opened old trunks and crates stacked beneath the slanted roof. Most contained useless relics of ordinary life. Winter coats, broken toys, books swollen from dampness. Then he found a locked chest. It belonged to his mother. He recognized the carved initials immediately, EV. The lock was rusted enough that the crowbar snapped it easily. Inside were dozens of letters tied together with faded ribbon, and beneath them hospital documents. Adrian unfolded the first page carefully. Patient name, Lucian Volkov. His blood turned cold. Volkov. His surname. He continued reading. Age 6 years old. Condition severe psychological disturbances. Violent behavioral episodes. Extreme sensitivity to light and sound. Recommended institutional treatment. Adrian stopped. His hands trembled violently now. No, that was impossible. He searched deeper into the chest until photographs spilled across the attic floor. One picture showed his mother holding 2 infant boys wrapped in blankets. Twins. Adrian stared at the image with widening eyes. One of the babies wore a small silver cross around his neck. The other did not. He flipped the photograph over. Adrian and Lucien. Winter 2001. The attic suddenly felt too small, too warm. He stumbled backward and struck a stack of boxes. Dust exploded into the air as fragments of memory began clawing their way through his mind. A second bed in his childhood room. A lullaby sung twice. Small fingers gripping his hand beneath a table. Then screaming. His mother crying. His father dragging something down the basement stairs. Adrian pressed both hands against his temples. No. The memories came like shattered glass. A locked door. A child pounding from the other side. His father shouting, "He isn't safe anymore." Then darkness. Years of darkness. That evening, Adrian drove into the nearby village for answers. The village looked exactly as he remembered: narrow streets, old stone houses, smoke curling from chimneys into the winter air. People glanced at him too long as he walked into the small grocery shop near the church. Old women whispered. An old man crossing the road stopped entirely when he recognized Adrian's face. It unsettled him, as if they had expected him to return one day. At the edge of the village stood a tiny medical office run by Dr. Petrescu, a frail man now well into his 70s. When Adrian entered, the old doctor nearly dropped his teacup. "Adrian." The way he said the name frightened him. "You knew my mother," Adrian said quietly. The doctor's expression darkened. "Yes, I had a brother." Silence filled the office. The old clock on the wall ticked loudly between them. Finally, Dr. Petrescu removed his glasses with shaking fingers. "You were not supposed to remember." Adrian felt ice spread through his chest. What happened to him? The doctor looked toward the window, where snow drifted past like ashes. "Your father believed the boy was cursed." Adrian stared at him. "That's insane. This village is old," the doctor whispered. "Older than reason," he explained slowly, painfully. Lucien had been different from birth. Sensitive. Violent at times. Terrified of strangers. There were incidents as children grew older, animals found mutilated near the woods, sudden fits of rage nights where Lucien claimed he heard voices beneath the house. Then came the fire. Adrian's father died that winter. Officially, it was ruled accidental. Unofficially, the villagers blamed Lucien. "He was only a child," Adrian snapped. "Yes," the doctor said softly, "but fear makes monsters out of children." Adrian's stomach twisted. "What did my mother do?" The doctor closed his eyes briefly. "She chose the son she believed she could save." The drive home felt unreal. Snow fell harder, now burying the road in white silence. Adrian gripped the steering wheel, while memories continued surfacing against his will. His mother carrying food downstairs late at night. His father installing locks, a voice crying behind walls. How had he forgotten all of it? Or perhaps the crueler question was, why had he been allowed to forget? By the time he reached the house, night had fully fallen. The storm had returned. Wind screamed through the trees. Inside, the electricity flickered weakly. Adrian locked the front door behind him and stood motionless in the hallway. The basement door waited at the end, like the mouth of something patient. He no longer felt only fear. Now there was guilt, too. A terrible, suffocating guilt. If Lucien truly had lived down there all these years, then what kind of suffering had that been? Adrian descended the stairs slowly. The basement smelled colder than before, heavy with damp stone and rust. At the far end beneath the stairs, the little wooden door stood exactly where it always had. The iron lock remained fastened, but tonight there was light beneath it, a thin pale glow leaking through the cracks. Adrian approached carefully. His voice broke when he spoke. Lucien silence, then movement. Slow footsteps approaching from the other side. Adrian knelt before the door. "I know your name now." For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the voice answered softly. "You remember me." The question destroyed him. Not because of what was said, but because of how desperately it was asked. Like someone drowning. Adrian swallowed hard. I'm trying to." A weak sound came from behind the door. Not laughter. Crying. "You left me here," Lucien whispered. Adrian shut his eyes. "I was a child. So was I." The basement seemed to collapse inward around those words. Adrian rested his forehead against the cold wood. He could hear breathing now on the other side. Thin. Fragile. Human. "My mother," Adrian began carefully. "Did she come down here often?" Every answer came slowly, as though Lucien had forgotten how conversations worked. "She sang sometimes." Adrian's throat tightened. "What else?" "She cried a lot." Snow battered the house above them. The weak basement light flickered overhead. Then Lucien spoke again. "Are you alone now?" Adrian hesitated. "Yes." Another silence. "Then so am I." Adrian looked at the iron lock hanging between them. Old. Rusting. Cruel. He imagined 15 years inside that darkness. 15 winters. 15 years listening to footsteps above his head while the world moved on without him. His hands trembled as he reached toward the lock. Behind the door, Lucien inhaled sharply. Almost afraid. Almost hopeful. And somewhere deep inside himself, Adrian realized the most horrifying truth of all. He was no longer certain whether opening the door was a mistake, or an act of mercy. The forest took him back. Adrian broke the lock before he could lose his courage. The sound cracked through the basement like a gunshot. For one terrible second, nothing moved. Then from behind the little wooden door, he heard a small gasp, so human and so frightened that it nearly shattered him. Adrian lowered the crowbar. His hand trembled around the cold iron. "Lucian," he whispered. "I'm going to open it." "No," the voice answered quickly. Adrian froze. On the other side of the door, Lucian's breathing had become sharp and uneven. "No light," he whispered. "Please, no light." Adrian looked up at the weak yellow bulb trembling above them. Then he reached for the switch and turned it off. Darkness swallowed the basement whole. Only the storm remained crying through the old stones of the house. Adrian placed his hand on the door and pushed. At first, it did not move. The wood had swollen with years of dampness, almost sealing itself into the frame. He pressed harder. Something scraped inside. Dust fell from the hinges. Then the door opened. A smell came out first. Stale air. Old cloth. Rotting wood. Something sour and human buried beneath the scent of candle wax and cold stone. Adrian covered his mouth, not from disgust, but grief. The flashlight was still in his hand, but he did not turn it on. He waited in the dark until his eyes adjusted. Slowly, shapes appeared. The room beneath the stairs was smaller than he had imagined. Not a room. A cell. There was a mattress on the floor, thin and blackened with age. A bucket in the corner. Shelves made from broken planks. Candle stubs melted into saucers. On every wall, scratched into the wood and stone, were words. "I was quiet today. I am sorry," Mother sang. "Adrian will come back." Adrian's throat closed. Then something moved in the far corner. A figure crouched, with its knees pulled to its chest, thin arms wrapped around itself. Long dark hair covered most of its face. Its skin looked almost gray in the darkness, stretched tightly over bones. It wore old clothes that had once belonged to a child, but had been torn and tied together over the years like bandages. Adrian could not speak. The figure lifted its head. Two eyes found him. They were his mother's eyes, and his own. Adrian Lucian whispered. The name broke something inside him. Adrian sank to his knees. Yes. Lucian stared at him, as if names were fragile things. "You're tall now." Adrian covered his mouth with one shaking hand. "So are you," he said, though it was not true. Lucian looked folded inward, as if life had pressed him down, and never allowed him to stand properly. For a long time, neither of them moved. Then Lucian raised one hand slowly, like an animal afraid of being struck. Adrian reached back. Their fingers touched. Lucian flinched violently, but did not pull away. His hand was freezing. That night, Adrian brought him upstairs. It took nearly an hour. Lucian could not tolerate the hallway light, so Adrian covered the lamps with scarves and lit only the fireplace. He moved slowly, speaking, softly explaining each step, before taking it as though leading a wounded child from ruins. When Lucian reached the kitchen, he stopped. His whole body trembled. He looked at the table, the windows, the hanging copper pans, the old blue bowls on the shelf. His eyes moved over everything, with wonder and terror. "This is still here," he whispered. Adrian did not ask what he meant. He made soup. Lucian ate like someone ashamed of hunger. He held the spoon with both hands. Sometimes he stopped suddenly and listened toward the ceiling, toward the wind, toward sounds Adrian could not hear. "Mother died?" Lucian asked after a while. Adrian sat across from him. "Yes." Lucian looked into the bowl. Did she suffer? The question was so gentle that it hurt more than anger would have. "She was sick for a long time," Adrian said. Lucian nodded slowly. "She was sad for a long time." Adrian lowered his eyes. "Yes." Lucian touched the rim of the bowl. "She told me you forgot me because you were happy." Adrian looked up sharply. "I didn't know." Lucian gave a small, empty smile. "I know. For 3 days, the world outside disappeared beneath snow. And for 3 days, Adrian tried to build a life inside the house from the wreckage of the one his family had destroyed. He cleaned the sitting room and made a bed for Lucian near the fire. He cut Lucian's hair carefully with kitchen scissors while Lucian sat perfectly still, tears slipping down his face without sound. He found clothes in his father's old wardrobe, though Lucian refused anything that smelled of him. At night, Lucian slept only when Adrian remained in the room. The smallest noises woke him. A branch against the window. The boiler shifting. The stairs creaking beneath the house's old weight. Each time Lucien would sit upright, eyes wide, whispering, "I'm quiet, I'm quiet." And each time Adrian would say, "You don't have to be." But neither of them truly believed it yet. On the fourth morning, the snow stopped. Sunlight touched the windows. Lucien retreated instantly into the corner, covering his face. "It burns," he whispered. Adrian closed the curtains. Only then did Lucien lower his hands. There were moments when Adrian saw the danger in him. Not evil, never that, but something broken, beyond ordinary repair. Once, when a glass slipped from the counter and shattered, Lucien screamed and overturned the table with a strength that stunned him. Another time, Adrian found him standing outside his bedroom at 3 a.m, silent and motionless, watching him sleep. When Adrian asked why, Lucien said, "I wanted to know if you disappear when I close my eyes." Adrian did not sleep after that. Still, pity was stronger than fear, because beneath every strange movement, every sudden panic, every whisper to shadows, there remained the same impossible truth: Lucien had been a child, and they had buried him alive. On the 5th evening, Adrian called Dr. Petrescu. He did not say everything at first, only that Lucien was alive, that he needed help, that he needed someone, discreet someone, kind. The line went silent for so long Adrian thought the call had failed. Then the old doctor said, "Do not keep him there alone." "I'm not alone with him," Adrian replied. "That is not what I mean." Adrian went cold. "What do you mean?" Dr. Petrescu's voice lowered. "Your father did not lock him away, only because the village feared him." Adrian gripped the phone tighter. "Then why?" The answer came like a prayer spoken in shame. Because Lucien was afraid of the thing he said lived beneath the house. And sometimes, when he screamed, another voice screamed with him. Before Adrian could respond, a sound came from the sitting room. A laugh. Lucien's laugh. High, soft, almost childlike. Adrian turned. Lucien was standing by the basement door. It was open. Darkness waited below. "Lucien," Adrian said carefully. His brother did not look at him. "She's calling," Lucien whispered. "Who?" Lucien smiled, but there was no joy in it. "Mother." Adrian crossed the hallway slowly. The basement below was black. From somewhere beneath the stairs came a faint knocking. Tock, tock, tock. Adrian's mouth went dry. Lucien began to descend. Adrian grabbed his arm. "No!" Lucien turned so quickly, Adrian barely saw the movement. For a moment, his brother's face changed completely. The softness vanished. His eyes became wild, wounded, furious. "She always comes when you sleep," Lucien hissed. "She says, 'I must go back.'" Adrian held on. "No one is putting you back." Lucien stared at him. Then his face crumpled. He collapsed against Adrian's chest with a sob so raw it seemed to tear through the house itself. "I was good," he cried. "I was so quiet." Adrian held him, and for the first time in their lives, the brothers wept together. The police came the next morning. Dr. Petrescu had called them. Adrian saw the cars through the kitchen window, black shapes crawling up the white road. His stomach dropped. Lucien saw them too. He made a sound, like a wounded animal. "They came for me." "No," Adrian said. "They came to help." But Lucien was already backing away. Boots crunched outside. Voices called Adrian's name. Someone knocked hard on the front door. Lucien covered his ears. "No rooms," he whispered. "No locks. No rooms." Adrian reached for him. "Lucien, listen to me." But the front door opened. 2 officers stepped inside, followed by Dr. Petrescu, pale and breathless. Lucien screamed. The sound was not human anymore. It was years of darkness tearing itself open. He ran. Adrian shouted his name and chased him through the kitchen, through the back door, into the blinding white of morning. Lucien stumbled into the snow, barefoot, thin coat flapping around him. Lucien. The forest waited at the edge of the yard. Dark pines. White ground. Endless silence. Lucien ran toward it. Adrian followed, lungs burning in the cold. Branches whipped his face. Snow swallowed his boots. Ahead, Lucien moved, like a shadow between the trees. Impossible and desperate. Lucien stopped. At last, Adrian found him in a clearing. His brother stood beneath falling snow, trembling arms wrapped around himself. Sunlight filtered through the branches, soft and silver. For the first time, Lucien looked fully visible. Not a monster. Not a secret. Only a man who had never been allowed to become one. Adrian approached slowly. "I won't let them lock you away," he said. Lucian looked at him with terrible tenderness. "You can't keep every door open." Adrian's eyes filled. "I can try." Lucian smiled faintly. "What does snow feel like?" The question struck Adrian like a blade. He knelt, gathered a little snow in his hands, and placed it gently into Lucian's palm. Lucian stared at it. The snow melted against his skin. Tears slipped down his face. "It's cold," he whispered. "Yes." And soft. "Yes." Lucian closed his fingers around the water it became. Then from somewhere deep in the forest, a woman's voice began to sing. Adrian turned sharply. It was his mother's lullaby. The same one from childhood. The same one from his dreams. When he looked back, Lucian was stepping away. "Don't," Adrian begged. Lucian's face was peaceful now. "She isn't angry anymore." "Lucian, please." His brother touched Adrian's cheek with freezing fingers. "You came back." Then he turned and walked into the trees. Adrian ran after him. He followed the footprints through the snow until they reached the edge of a frozen stream. There they stopped. No broken ice. No body. No further tracks. Only white silence. They searched for 3 days. Men from the village police dogs, even Dr. Petrescu, despite his age. They found nothing. No coat. No blood. No sign that Lucian had ever existed beyond the room beneath the stairs and the wounds he left behind. By spring, Adrian sold the house. On his last evening there, he stood in the empty hallway with one suitcase in his hand. The rooms were bare now, the furniture gone, the photographs packed away. The basement door was sealed with new wood and iron. Adrian placed his palm against it. "I'm sorry," he whispered. For a long moment the house was silent. Then from beneath the stairs came a sound. Soft, patient, familiar. Tock. Adrian closed his eyes. Another knock followed. Tock. Then a voice faint as breath under snow. "Are you still there?" Adrian did not run. He leaned his forehead against the door, and in the dying light of that old European winter, with the forest waiting beyond the windows, he answered the only truth he had left. "Yes," he whispered. "I'm still here."